The interior of the C-47 transport plane was a tomb of green light and vibration. Silas sat on the narrow metal bench, his knees knocking against the man across from him. He was carrying nearly 100 pounds of gear: a rifle, a shovel, extra socks, grenades, and a heavy parachute pack. But the heaviest thing he carried was the silence in his chest. Around him, the men of the 101st Airborne were mere silhouettes. No one talked. The roar of the twin engines made conversation impossible anyway. Every few seconds, the plane would buck like a wild horse as German anti-aircraft fire, the flak, exploded in the clouds around them. "Stand up," the jump master bellowed, his voice cutting through the engine noise. Silas stood, his legs feeling like lead. He hooked his static line to the metal cable running down the center of the plane. Click, the sound of a dozen metal clips snapping onto the line, was the last bit of order Silas would know for a long time. Green light, go, go. Silas reached the open door, and for a split second he saw the world. Below him, France was a dark tapestry of hedgerows and silver rivers, lit up by the terrifying neon beauty of tracer fire. Then he stepped into the void. The wind hit him like a physical blow, spinning him into the freezing dark. A second later, the parachute snapped open with a violent jerk that nearly knocked the wind out of him. The roar of the planes faded, replaced by an eerie, whistling silence. He was floating, a single white seed falling into a garden of fire. But something was wrong. Instead of solid ground, he saw a shimmering black mirror beneath his boots. The Germans had opened the locks on the rivers, flooding the marshes to drown the paratroopers. "Not the water," Silas whispered, his voice lost in the wind. "Not the water." He hit the surface with a heavy splash. Immediately, the weight of his gear began to pull him down into the muck. The silk parachute draped over him like a wet shroud, tangling his arms. He struggled, his boots treading into the soft, sucking mud of the flooded field. He pulled his combat knife and slashed at the cords, gasping as he finally broke free and dragged himself toward a dark line of trees. He was alone. No sergeant, no squad, no planes. Just the sound of his own dripping uniform and the distant boom of heavy guns. He pulled out his cricket, a small metal clicker used to identify friends in the dark. He crouched behind a stone wall, his heart hammering. From the bushes across the path, he heard a sound. A boot crunching on gravel. Silas held his breath. He pressed the cricket. Click-clack. He waited, his finger on the trigger of his M1 Garand. A second later, the response came from the darkness. Click-clack. Click-clack. A man crawled out of the brush. It was Miller, a boy from his platoon, his face covered in soot and his uniform torn. They didn't speak. They just nodded. In that moment, they weren't an army. They were just two lost souls in a foreign land. "Where are we?" Miller whispered. Silas looked up at the moon, partially hidden by the smoke of a burning farmhouse nearby. "We're behind the lines, Miller. We're exactly where we're supposed to be." They began to move through the hedgerows, shadows among shadows. They didn't have a map, and they didn't have a plan, but they had their rifles, and they had each other. As the first gray light of dawn began to touch the horizon, Silas heard it, the faint, distant thunder of thousands of ships hitting the beaches miles away. The longest day had begun. Silas took a deep breath of the damp French air and stepped out of the tree line, walking toward the sound of the guns. He had fallen from the sky to save a world he had never seen, and he wasn't going to stop until the sun went down.